What's up, guys? I'm Gunner, bringing you another episode of the GMoney poker vlog. We've got some exciting news to share today. I partnered with a company called PLO Mastermind. It's a training, study, and solver software suite for PLO. I've been getting questions about what solver and study tools do I use. This is actually it. I was excited when they reached out, considering I only started this channel 6 weeks ago, and really it's been made possible by all of you that have been subscribing and liking these videos. So I really appreciate it. If you're interested in learning more, I have a referral link below. Be sure to check it out. And if you are interested in purchasing, let me know. I'm creating a private Telegram group where I'll bring all the crushers together and we can study, share hands, things like that. Without further ado, let's get into the hands. I get to the lodge around 9 a.m. One of the first hands I get involved in is a bomb pot. I look down at King, Queen, Jack, Deuce with King High clubs in the low jack. I see flops of 3, 4, Jack with 2 spades on the bottom board and 10, 8, 3 rainbow on the top board. I only have top pair on the bottom board and a gut shot on the top board, but turns could improve my equity significantly. I don't want to lead out when it checks to me here, so I check as well. The button bet's 50, which is a small bet considering the size of the pot and the antes in the middle. The big blind calls, and I decided to make a somewhat speculative call here, but I think my hand can improve on the turn quite a bit. The hijack calls and the cutoff calls. The turn now comes the Queen of clubs on the bottom, improving me to top 2 pair, and the Ace of clubs on the top board. This is a great card. Any 9, Jack, Queen, or King gives me the nut straight, and any club will give me the nut flush on the top board. It checks to me, and I don't want to lead into the field, considering I don't have a made hand on the top board yet. So I check. The cutoff now goes all in for 145. The small blind goes all in for less. The big blind calls, and I'm getting an excellent price, so I call as well. The hijack makes the call, and we're headed to 2 rivers. The bottom board comes to 10 of spades, and the top board comes to Ace of diamonds. Both of these cards are pretty terrible for my hand. I totally whiff on the top board, and on the bottom board, there's now a lot of straights possible and flushes. It checks to me, definitely not going to bet here, so I check, and it checks around. We head to showdown. One opponent shows that he has the nut flush on the bottom board, and another opponent has a set which makes the full house on the top board, and I'm going to lose this one. Sometimes the cards just don't fall in your favor. Not long after, I look down at Ace, King, 9, 8 with Ace High clubs in the cutoff. There's a $10 straddle on, the hijack limps, and I raise it to 45. The button and the small blind make the call. The straddle, who's a short stack, now pots it to 240. This almost puts them all in. It gets back to me, and I think the best play here is just going to be repotting it to isolate. So I do just that. It folds back to the straddle, who calls all in for 275. We head to 2 runouts. The first board comes 4 diamonds, King of clubs, Queen of diamonds, 7 of diamonds on the turn, and the 2 of hearts on the river. The second board now comes 3 of diamonds, 10 of hearts, Jack of diamonds, 5 of hearts on the turn, King of hearts on the river. So I make top on both boards. I show my hand, and my opponent has Ace, Queen, Jack, 4 with spades and hearts. So he makes 2 pair on the first run out and the flush on the second run out. I'm going to lose this one, but the equity in this spot was actually a coin flip. I'm making the right plays to start the session, but the cards aren't falling in my favor. Not long after, I look down at King, 9, 4, single suited with spades in the low jack. There's a $10 straddle and a middle position limp. I pot it to 45. After reviewing this hand, I was kind of curious if this was really an open, and PLO trainer says that single suited kings here with the 9-4 is a pot, which I do. Cutoff, big blind, straddle, and middle position make the call. We're headed 5 ways to a flop that comes 9, 7, king with 2 spades. Great flop for our hand here. Checks to me, definitely going to put in a bet with top set and spades, so I bet 150. The big blind's the only caller, so we're headed heads up to a turn, which comes with 2 of spades. It checks to me, and I think I have so much of this hand locked up, I want to check for deception here, and let my opponent catch up. So I check as well. The river now comes to 7 of clubs, improving me to a top full house. My opponent takes the bait, and he leads out for 250. I now have a decision of how much I want to raise. I only lose to pocket sevens, and if he has that, he has it. I could raise small, let's say 750, but any raise I put in here is going to be quite polarizing. So if I'm going to bet 750, I might as well just bet pot. I think the only non-polarizing size would be the min raise to 500, but that still looks suspicious. So I just pot it. My opponent thinks for quite some time, and he's saying, could he have kings? I don't know. And I'm praying for the call. He ultimately folds, and he says he had 9-9, but I think this guy's kind of full of crap here. I think he probably had worse spades. He said he had another hand that comes up later in the vlog, which I'll explain then, but I don't really believe him here. I think he would have put in the call with nines. It took a few hands, but the cards fall in my favor, and I'm going to scoop a nice pot here. The very next deal, I look down at Jack-Jack 10-8 with 10 high diamonds in middle position. There's no straddle in this hand. Under the gun limps for 5 before I pot it to 20. The button, small blind, big blind, and under the gun, call. We're headed 5 ways to a flop, which comes Jack, King, 6, rainbow. So I flop sets in back-to-back hands. It checks to me, and I bet for 65. Big blind and under the gun make the call. We're headed 3 ways to a turn, which comes to 6 of clubs. So I make a full house now in back-to-back hands. It checks to me, and I want to bet for value here. My opponents could have improved to trips with the 6 pairing. So I bet 200. Unfortunately, they both fold, but it's good to see the cards going our way. After a couple unfortunate runouts, and then a couple of great runouts, I'm now sitting on $2,400 for my $2,000 buy-in. Not much happens for about an hour and a half, until I look down at Ace, King, 10-5 with Ace High clubs in the cutoff. There's a $10 straddle and an under the gun limp before middle position pots it to 45. The low jack calls, and I think my hand's strong enough to 3-bet in position here, so I raise it to 150. I checked with PLO trainer, and this hand is actually a call. It would be a pot if it was double suited. Nonetheless, here we are. It folds to the straddle, who calls the 150. Middle position now goes all in for 650 total. So I have to go 500 to win about 1,000. I only need 33% equity to break even here. I think I have to make the call given the math. I call. It's on the straddle, and he's thinking about it before calling as well. So I only need 25% equity to break even here. We're going to run it one time. The board runs out Jack of spades, 4 of diamonds, 8 of clubs. There's a 2 of diamonds on the turn and a 5 of hearts on the river. The straddle table's 9-9-8-8, so he flopped a set. Middle position shows down King, King, Queen 10. So I'm going to lose this one, but definitely going to learn from it. It's nice to have feedback from the solver, so I won't make this mistake again. Not long after, I look down at Ace, King, 10-3 with King High hearts in the big blind. Under the gun limps for 5. Middle position, low jack, and the hijack limp as well before the cutoff pots it to 35. The small blind, myself, under the gun, low jack, and the hijack call. We're headed 6 ways to a flop, which comes Ace, Ace, Deuce with 2 spades. This is a great flop for my hand, giving me 3 aces with the king kicker. I decide to check, and it checks to the cutoff, who bets 160. The small blind calls, and I think my hand's strong enough to put pressure on my opponents here. If they do have ace deuce, I'll have 9 outs. It'll also leave me the opportunity to be aggressive on future streets, even if I don't hit my full house on the turn. My opponents will have to constantly guess if I have a full house, or if the card that comes out improved me to a better full house. I think given this, I want to pot it here, which I do, to 855. The cutoff folds quickly, and it's back on the small blind who thinks about it, before folding deuce deuce face up. Surprised that she would fold that hand, but it does make sense. I could already have ace deuce, or like I said, I could bet on future streets and apply pressure if, let's say, a 6 or a 7 or some other card that could potentially have given me a full house comes out. She's just going to be guessing the whole time. If she had called, I would still have about 42% equity. Aggression pays off in this one, and I rake a nice pot. The very next deal, I look down at ace, queen, jack, 9 with ace high spades in the small blind. There's a $10 straddle on. Middle position, low jack, hijack, cutoff, and the button all limp. I want to raise this one, so I pot it to 75. There's 6 callers, and we're headed 7 ways to a flop, which comes ace, 7, 5 with 2 spades. So I smash this flop, having top pair and the nut flush draw. I think being aggressive here is going to yield a lot of folds, and I can improve on later streets. So I decide to pot it to 535. This is very much a solver approved play. Everyone folds this time, and I'm going to take down another nice pot. After those last hands, I'm now up to about 2,600 for my $2,000 buy-in. A little bit later, I look down at double suited aces, ace, ace, queen, 6, spades, and hearts, in the $10 straddle. There's 4 limps before the button raises to 60. Definitely want a pot with double suited aces, so I pot it to 225. Only the button makes the call, and we're headed heads up to the flop, which comes queen, 4, king, rainbow. This is a solid flop for my hand because I block queens and 2 pair hands like king, queen, or queen, 4. I also have a pair of aces, and we're heads up. I think aggression is going to pay off again, so I pot it to 495. The button thinks about it before ultimately folding, and I'm going to drag another one. It's interesting to note that PLO trainer prefers a half pot sizing with most of my aces here, and prefers a check with all sets or 2 pair hands that have aces. I now look down at ace, 6, 4, deuce with ace high clubs in the low jack. There's a $10 straddle, and I open to 35. Hijack, button, small blind in the straddle, call. We're headed 5 ways to a flop, which comes 7, 5, 8 with 2 diamonds. I flop the under straight, 4 through 8. I would be losing to 6, 9. But I definitely want to bet here, so I bet 110. The button and the small blind make the call. We're headed to a turn, which is the king of spades. It's the perfect brick for my hand. If I had the best hand, I still have the best hand. Both of these opponents are short stacked, so I'm just going to declare that I have the best hand. I bet 275. The button now goes all in for 375. We head to one river, which is the 2 of clubs. I show my hand and say I have a straight. My opponent checks his cards before mucking, and I'm going to take down another nice pot. The very next deal, I look down at queen, jack, 10, 9 with jack high hearts in middle position. There's a $10 straddle, and I open to 35. There's 5 callers, and we're headed 6 ways to the flop. The flop comes 8, 10, 7 with 2 clubs. So I flop the nut straight with jack 9. I also have redraws to better straights. Unfortunately, I don't have any clubs, but this means my opponents will be likely to continue if they do have a club draw, since I unblock that. Definitely want to bet big with 6 opponents, so I pot it to 230. It ends up folding around, so no further value, but I'm going to drag another one. Next, I look down at jack, 10, 7, 4, double suited in the hijack. There's a $10 straddle and 1 limp before I pot it to 45. The big blind re-raises to 125. The limper calls, and I'm definitely going to call getting these odds. We're headed 3 ways to the flop, which comes king, 8, 10 with 2 hearts. I flop a low flush draw, a pair, and a gut shot. Both opponents now check to me, and given that I have nutted outs and blockers to strong draws, and also have draws myself, I definitely think I can bet and try and take it down here. So I pot it to 390. Both opponents fold, and I win another one. I now look down at king, 10, 8, 7, double suited, hearts and diamonds in the cutoff. There's a $10 straddle and 3 limps to me before I pot it to 65. There's 4 callers, and we're headed 5 ways to a flop in position. The flop comes 5, 3, 9, rainbow with 1 heart. I flop a decent flop for my hand with a gut shot and a backdoor heart draw. It checks to me, and I don't think I'm going to have enough equity against the field to bet here, so I check it back. The turn comes a 10 of hearts. This improves me to an open-ended straight draw and a flush draw. It checks to me again, and I potted to 340 to apply pressure to my opponents with my strong draws. Only the straddle calls, and we're headed heads up to a river. The river now comes the Jack of Hearts. I make my flush, and it checks to me. I'm now faced with the decision of how much to bet or if I want to bet. I think about what hands my opponent could have when he calls the turn for 340. He could have straight draws, he could have two pairs or sets, and he could also have flush draws that hit as well. I think if I bet, I can get called by worse flush draws, but after calling such a big bet, it feels a bit dicey because he could have the ace-high flush. We're also sitting about $2,000 effective, so if I were to bet say 500 for value and he pots it back, I'll be in a miserable spot. I ultimately decide on the safe option here to check. I show my flush, and it's good. Let me know what you would have done here in the comments. After winning all these pots, I'm now sitting on a $4,400 stack, up for my $2,000 buy-in. I now look down at ace, 7-6 with ace-high diamonds in the $10 straddle. These are pretty good aces because I have a suited ace and middling connected cards. There's 6 limpers over a $10 straddle. Before it's back to me, definitely potting it here to 85. All 5 of the limpers call until the big blind now goes all in for 515. I sit here for a minute while he counts out the bet and the dealer gets everything right. I want to make it look like I'm contemplating my options, but really I'm just thinking about Vegas and the Mirage. Definitely going to repot it here, and ultimately I do. It's a $1,970 bet. It's on the middle position player, and he's thinking about it for a while. It's kind of sketchy because he has $5,500 and covers me. If he were to just call here, I could be in some dicey spots on flops. Ultimately, he folds, but the button now calls all in for $1,200. After calling, he asks if I have aces, and I say, of course I have aces. We're going to run it twice. The first run out comes 3, 6, 10 with 2 clubs. The turn's the 2 of clubs, and the river's the queen of hearts. The second run out comes 2, 3, 4, rainbow. The turn's the 5 of clubs, and the river's the 7 of spades. So I'm playing aces on the top board, and I make a straight on the bottom board. The big blind table is king, king, jack 9 with clubs. So he's going to win half the main pot on the top board, but I'm going to win with my straight on the bottom board. The button mucks his hand, so I'm going to take down a huge side pot and half the main pot. Huge win here, definitely the hand of the vlog. Let's go. After winning that one, the stack's now up to around 5,700. I'm up 3,700 on the session. I now look down at jack, jack, 8 deuce with jack high spades in the $10 straddle. There's 6 limpers, and I don't think this hand's strong enough to raise here, so I just check my option, and we're headed 7 ways to a flop, which comes 10 king jack with 2 clubs. I flop middle set, but straights are possible, queen 9 and ace queen. So I check, being out of position, and the flop checks around. The turn's now the 7 of clubs, so this board went from bad to worse for my set. Now I lose to straights and flushes, so I check again, and it checks around again. The river's now great. It's a 7 of hearts, so I make a full house, jack's full of 7s. Definitely want to bet for value. I think 50 is a good size here, so that's what I bet. The under the gun player now raises me to 175. It folds around to me, and I'm contemplating a raise, but I don't really know what you would call with if I 3-bet on the river. Anybody who 3-bets on the river in PLO is going to have a super nutted hand, and my hand isn't as nutted as it would need to be for 3-betting here. Obviously, if I had kings or 7s, I could re-raise, but I think jacks is getting a little low in the range. She could have easily flopped top set of kings and been thinking the same thing I was thinking through the whole hand. She also could have pocket 10s, or maybe like a 7x boat, but I don't know if she would call the 3-bet if I were to pot it, or even raise to like 400 here. I don't know, kind of dicey. I decide to check, and I flip my cards, and she says, oh snap, I misread my hand, and shows some random hand that shouldn't have been in this pot at all. So I don't think I missed out on any value here, but let me know what you think in the comments. I'm getting kind of tired and decide to rack up. I rack up $6,050. It's a $4,000+ profit, and the biggest profit on the vlog so far. I've already filmed the footage for vlog number 9, and I can say it's going to be a good one. So definitely subscribe if you're not already. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you all. See you in the next vlog.